All right, so we're back. Now we're in chapter 4, and we're about to get ready to go into more in depth on understanding how Java and learning about Java. So let's get into it. So now we're in chapter 4 and we're in section 4.1, and we're going to be talking about classes in Java. So let's get into the curriculum. 4.1, classes for Java. In previous programming studies, we have come across classes and objects. Classes or objects in Java are similar to classes and objects in other languages. 4.1.1, a minimum class and object. Classes may contain fields and methods. Fields contain our data. For the class, and methods define actions a class can take. We say that fields and methods are members of a class. Now, let's do a little recapping here. When we say class, and everything in Java is an object, but a class is the blueprint. It's the blueprint to whatever it is that you're going to build. And understand that a blueprint is a guide. It tells you the steps you need to take, it tells you the materials you need to buy, which are your objects, right? Those are those materials that you need to buy. And it also can give you some instructions on what actions that you need to take to build whatever it is that you're building. Well, this is what a class does. A class is something that you're going to build. And inside that class, you're going to have your fields, and your fields are your objects. And then your methods. And remember, your methods are verbs. So you want to give them names that gives an action. So we're going to call them something that pertains to some type of action that we want to take. That's how you identify a method. You don't give a method a noun name. You give it a verb name, because a verb is an action word. Okay, so now we understand that. Let's get back to the curriculum. So here we have an example we want to do. Let's create a class called Hello World with one field, message, and one method, say hello. Message will be a string and have a value of hello world. Say hello method will not return a specific value and instead print out the value of a message. Here's our example. Now let's go over to our IntelliJ. I'm going to open up IntelliJ. Let me put this side by side. And we want our IntelliJ. Close that. Now I still have it open to our exercise that we were working on. So in order to close that, what I wanted you to do is go right here to close project. We close our project. So now we have our project closed. Oh, let me minimize that. We have our project closed. Let me put that back up there. All right, where we at? Okay. And so I want to create a new project. In this new project, the name I'm going to give it is practice. And I'm going to call it hello. Call it practice hello world. So you want to get into the habit of creating projects. Do it often so that you can be familiar with how to create a project. So now I make sure Java is checked. IntelliJ, I'm on JDK 11. And so I'm going to hit create. All right, let me make that bigger because it's all right. So now I have my practice hello, and I spelled practice wrong. So here we have a source, and then we have a main right here. And in that main, we have a public static void where we can actually run it. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a class. So if you come up to source, right click, new, then a Java class. We're going to call it hello world. That's our class. So it creates our class. Notice that our class is just a public class, and we can't run it. There are no play buttons on here, right? So it lets us know that this is going to be a class that we are going to have to create a new instance for in order to run it. But according to our instructions, it tells us what we need to do. So I'm going to do put as, and I'm just going to hit enter. Yep, that's not what I wanted. So now we got the class created, hello world. And now, according to the instruction, it wants us to create a public. So we're going to do public string. And we're going to call this message. And this is our field. In our field, we're going to assign it the value hello world. Now notice that the string is in double quotes. So now we have our method. Now, one of the things I want you to do to get in a habit of knowing what's what until you get more familiar with writing your code, let's put a comment here, and we're going to call this our field. Did I spell field right? Nope. Boy, I can't type when I'm so this is our field, and our field is our what? Object. So we know that this is our field object. And just so you can be able to see it and remember this is what it is, because as you go through the lessons until you get more familiar with it, sometimes when we throw out terms at you, you may forget what that means. But continue putting comments next to stuff so that you can say, okay, this is a field, this is a method, this is a constructor, so you can see the difference. So we'll do that as an exercise as we're going through learning about Java. So the next thing we need to do is we need to create a method. So it's public. And we're going to put void, say hello. And we know that it's a method because it has a parenthesis behind it. And I put some extra characters in there that I don't need, those brackets. Let me get rid of those because I want to type public and I hit the, there we go. So let me fix that. So we got that fixed. So we know that that's ready to go. So let me see if anything else, everything is right about that. Say hello. All right. And then I need to make these curly braces. Sometimes when you're recording this, you make mistakes as you go along, but that's okay. And you know, it's easy to make these mistakes. So so now here's a little shortcut to creating the system out print line. All you got to do is type SOUT. Hit tab, and it go ahead and it completes it for you. You want to get used to using these type of shortcuts because it makes your flow a lot faster. So here we've created this particular class, which has a field and it also has a method. And so here I'm going to comment this out right here and say this is my method, because you want to know the difference between which method you have. Like a constructor is a special kind of method, and so you want to be able to identify what's different about each one. Same way when you're doing a for loop, you know what a for loop is, but you're introduced to the for each syntax is a little bit different. So you're gonna do a little comment, this is a for each. So your eyes get trained to the syntax, okay? So that's what we did. So now we've created that class. Now let's go ahead and let's continue to read. Now it says the only field in the hello world class is the string message, while the only method is say hello, which prints the value of the message field and doesn't return anything. There's no return here. So notice that it's not returning anything. All it's doing is printing. That's another key word. So here, I would type that here so you can get used to understanding the syntax, so, and understanding these keywords that we're giving you. So when we throw those keywords out there, when we're not giving you any examples, you know what we mean. So if I say print something, you know this is what it means, okay? So it says here, no, there is no main method, which is required to run a Java program. Without it, we have to do some additional work to get our program to run. Okay, which it tells us here to execute, say hello, we'll need to create an instance of the class hello world. We refer to an object created from a particular class as an instance of that class. So we just want to get the instance of it. We don't actually get the whole class. We just get an instance of it, meaning we have access to what the class is holding. Now, here's how this might look with our Hello World class. So, all right, so I'm going to scroll this up a little bit. Let me go over here to source. I'm going to create another class. And this time I'm going to call it Hello World Runner. Did I do that right? Oh, and I didn't spell hello right. All right, so I'm hit enter. Now I've created it. Now, here's another quick shortcut to create, to complete it for you, so you don't have to type out public static void. Just type PS, and you can see it right there in IntelliJ. It's giving you an option right there. If I click tab, it completes it for me. So the syntax is already there for you. That's the cool thing about with IntelliJ. I mean, it's so smart that it gives you commands and it works. It really works most of the time. Rarely do I ever run into any issues with IntelliJ not completing stuff for me, like in VS Code. So here we got our syntax here, and you noticed here we have the play button. So that means we can run this. So how do we run this? The Hello World. We have to create an instance. So here's the class right here. So hello, and it gave me completed it for me. Gave me an option to complete it. So I hit tab, and now I'm going to assign it to this variable. And then what I need is the instant. And how do I create an instance? By putting the new keyword in front of it. Now I'm gonna type hello world again. It's showing me right here I have an option. Hit enter. There it is. It completes it for me. And now I have access to what's inside the Hello World class. Now, how do I get that information? All I got to do is because I have an object now, have hello dot, and then I got some options right here. You see, I have say hello. That's the method I'm looking for. So I hit tab, and there I have it complete. So now all I have to do is come over here and hit that run button. And it's building. As you can see it down at the bottom now, there it is. It prints out hello world. So now we know our code is working. So it says, in order to call the say hello method or hello world, we must first have an instance of hello world, which we create using the syntax new hello world. As with built-in classes, classes that we create define their own types. So the object hello is a variable of type hello world. Let me read that again. As with built-in classes, classes that we create define our types. So the object hello, remember I said it's an object. How do I know it's an object? Because I have the hello, which is holding the instance of the class now, and I have that dot. Whenever I see that dot, that lets me know I'm dealing with an object. And on the right side of the dot is either going to be a method or a property. So that's my clue as I think like the compiler. And it says, we introduced this Hello World class as a means of illustrating the simplest representation of some basic concepts in Java. The goal of the next few lessons is to build up the machinery to create a wide variety of interesting classes that can be used to create complex programs and elegantly solve difficult problems. Okay. Now we're getting over to 4.1.2, the this keyword. In Hello World above, we could have written say hello this way with the same net effect. All I had to do was go over here to my Hello World. I could have just written right here in message. I just could have did this, just wrote this. And now if I go over and it's telling me right now, if I go over to Hello World and run it, I should not get an error. It should still run Hello World, print out Hello World, which that it did. In this context, inside of the class, we can refer to fields and methods that belong to the class using the special object. This is an object because of that dot. Whenever you use this, it always refers to the object that gives the code is currently within. In other words, this will always be an instance of the given class. So this represents, let me go back over here to the hello world. This right here represents this message right here. That's the object. Remember, the field, the object. That's what this represents. And notice that inside this class, these fields are always going to be at the top. You always declare your objects at the top. And so we'll call this the top level or the global level of the class. Or the world, no, not the world. We'll call it the global level for this because we will have some examples where we'll call it the world. That's for the whole entire project. But we'll call it the top level. Let's put it that way. Let's just call it the top level, at the top level. And then we're dealing with scope. And then when we decide to put our fields or objects inside of the method, those are local to that particular method. And we'll explain now. So here it says, since it's not legal to create code outside of a class in Java, this nearly always makes sense to use. There is one exception that we will encounter soon. You are allowed to create local variables declared within a method. There, that keyword is local variable, with the same name as a field of the given class. In this case, in order to refer to the field, we must use this. All right. So let's do this first. And so up here, we're calling this, let me minimize this for now. We call it the field object, and we're going to call these type of, we're going to call these high level. And now what we're going to do is we're going to, according to our instructions over here, we're going to create another. All right, let me get over here. Let me make this smaller so I can have more room for us. Okay, here we go. So now we're going to create another string inside of our method here, or another field, a local field to our method here. And we're going to call this one string. And we're going to call this one message. And now we're going to give it the value of goodbye. All right, so we got goodbye world. Got hello world. Now we have goodbye world. Let me put a space in here. Okay, so we have that goodbye world, and we have hello world. So now I'm going to do SOUT shortcut, and then inside of this, I'm going to print message. All right, so now if I come over here, what do you think is going to happen that I created it? What is going to be my output? So when I run this now, because remember, I have access to what's in that class. I got goodbye world, hello world, right? So I have both of them. So if I come over here and if I comment out this one right here, and then I'm going to call this, let me give this is my local. We call this our local object. So it's local to this particular method. So let me put that in there. And I want you to kind of get in the habit of doing this for right now until you identify and know exactly what the difference is. And now I got that print message there. I'm going to comment that whole thing out, and then I'm going to come back over here and run it again. There we go. It says goodbye. But now, remember I said that if I have this in here, and then I comment that out, and I put this, let's see what's going to happen. What do you think is going to happen? Let's run it. Hello world. All right, so now we're understanding what this represents. It represents the high level object, which is the message at the top of the class. And like you said, you're always going to declare your your objects at the top. A lot of times you just declare them. You don't even give them a value yet. You don't initiate them yet. But we'll go over that in later sections. All right, so here we go. Warning. When a local variable has the same name as a field, we say that the local variable shadows. Now I call this, so I'm gonna make sure I put variable right here because that's what I want y'all to remember, the difference. So this is the local variable. It says shadow. This is the same name as this one up here. So this message is shadowing this one up here on 2. Errors caused by shadowing can be tricky to spot, so it's best to avoid doing this in your code. If you want to learn more about this subject, check out the Oracle documentation on using this keyword. Now, the way that you can solve this problem right here, and you may do this in the future, is best. It's one of the practices that we use. We just put an A if you have to name it the same thing, because it gives it a totally different name. Remember, our variables, they have to be exact. So a message is different from just message. Now, one of the things I want you to do is to go to this documentation and read the documentation. But before you do that, I want you to go through this whole entire chapter first. Finish the chapter, especially if you're in the LC 101 course and you're in this cohort. Finish this chapter, because what happens is you may get stuck on a particular section, and now you find yourself discouraged, and it's taking you longer to get through the chapter, when if you go through the entire chapter and get exposed to that information, then you go back and review and play around with the code and do what I'm doing here and take your time, because we may answer some of your questions later on in the chapter, or it may help you have an understanding before you get to the exercise. So when you get to the exercise, remember, you're going to be reviewing some more. So I highly recommend to you, go ahead and finish this chapter, go to the next section. Don't stay here and start trying to practice it right now, but I want you to get through the whole chapter first and then come back and practice. Because remember, the more you practice, the more you improve. See you in the next section.